Yuna pressed her back against the cold metal wall and tried to make herself small. The engine room was hot and loud, filled with the deep hum of machines she had learned to understand over the past 11 months. Sweat dripped down her face, but she did not wipe it away. Movement attracted attention, and attention meant pain. The Velith guard walked past her, its 4 arms swinging at its sides. The creature was tall, nearly 3 meters, with gray skin that looked like wet stone. Its eyes were completely black, like 2 holes in its face. Yuna had learned to hate those eyes. They looked at humans the way humans looked at insects. When the guard moved to the far side of the room, Yuna returned to her work. She was cleaning a power conduit, a job the Velith considered too simple for their own kind. They thought humans were stupid. They thought humans could only do basic tasks. They were very, very wrong. Yuna had been a junior engineer on the Europa Research Station. She had studied advanced physics and ship systems since she was 16 years old. When the Velith raided the station, they killed everyone who fought back. They took the rest as slaves. 47 humans were loaded onto the ship called the Kethavar. Now only 12 remained. The others had died from work, from punishment, or from giving up hope. Yuna refused to give up. Every day she watched the Velith operate their ship. Every night she memorized what she had seen. The aliens never noticed. Why would they? She was just a small human woman cleaning their engines. During the brief rest periods, Yuna whispered with her friend Dohi. Dohi had been a pilot before the raid. She was older than Yuna by 5 years, and she had a calm strength that kept the other survivors going. They spoke in a mix of Korean and made-up words that the Velith could not understand. They planned. "The third shift," Dohi said one night, her voice barely louder than breathing. "The crew sleeps during the third shift. Only 4 guards stay awake." Yuna nodded. She had noticed the same thing. The Velith needed long periods of rest to regenerate their energy. During those hours, the ship was almost empty. "I can reach the secondary bridge," Yuna whispered back. "I know the maintenance tunnels. They do not watch them." Dohi looked at her with serious eyes. "If you fail, they will kill all of us." "If we do nothing, we will die anyway," Yuna replied. "Slowly, one by one. I would rather die trying." The other survivors were told the plan in small pieces, passed from person to person during work shifts. Jinho, a quiet man who worked in the weapons bay, would disable the guards in his section. Mirai, a young woman who cleaned the crew quarters, would jam the door mechanisms from the inside. Everyone had a role. Everyone understood the risk. The night came faster than Yuna expected. She lay in the slave quarters, a small room with metal floors and no beds, and waited for the signal. Her heart beat so hard she thought the Velith might hear it through the walls. Dohi touched her hand in the darkness. "Now." Yuna moved. She had practiced this path 100 times in her mind, through the maintenance hatch behind the waste unit, down the narrow tunnel that ran along the ship's spine, left at the junction, then right, then straight for 50 meters. She counted her steps to keep herself calm. The tunnel was dark and tight. Yuna had to crawl on her hands and knees, her breath echoing off the metal walls. She could hear the ship around her, groaning and humming like a living thing. Somewhere above, the Velith slept in their quarters, trusting that their slaves were too broken to fight. Yuna reached the secondary bridge after 20 minutes. Her arms shook from the effort of crawling, but she forced herself to focus. The door panel glowed softly in the darkness. She had watched the Velith use these panels many times. She knew the symbols, the sequences, the patterns. Her fingers moved across the controls. The first command sealed the crew quarters. Heavy doors slammed shut throughout the ship, locking 63 Velith soldiers in their rooms. The second command transferred atmosphere controls to her station. The third command cut their communications. An alarm started to wail, then stopped. Yuna had disabled it. She heard pounding from somewhere deep in the ship. The Velith were awake now, trapped behind doors they could not open. She imagined their confusion, their anger. For 11 months, they had treated humans like animals. Now the animals had locked them in cages. Yuna found the internal communication system and opened a channel to the entire ship. Her voice came out steady, though her hands were shaking. "This is Yuna. All humans, come to the secondary bridge now. We have taken the ship." She could hear cheering from somewhere in the distance. It was the most beautiful sound she had ever heard. The Velith commander was named Overseer Thrall. He was the one who had ordered the raid on Europa. He was the one who decided which humans lived and which humans died. Now he was trapped in his quarters, beating his 4 fists against a door that would not move. Yuna walked through the ship to stand outside his room. She could hear him screaming orders that no one would follow. She pressed the communication button on the wall. "Overseer Thrall," she said, "can you hear me?" The pounding stopped. There was a moment of silence. "You will die for this," the Velith commander said through the door. His voice was deep and cold. "Your entire species will pay for this insult." Yuna smiled, though he could not see it. "You taught us that we were weak. You told us we were primitive. You said we existed only to serve your empire." She paused, letting her words sink in. "You should have killed us instead." She turned away from the door and walked toward the main bridge. Behind her, Thrall started screaming again, but his voice grew quieter with each step she took. The other survivors were gathering now. Dohi had reached the bridge first, and she was already studying the navigation controls. Jinho arrived with blood on his hands, the guards in his section no longer a problem. Mirai came running, tears streaming down her face but laughing at the same time. 12 humans stood on the bridge of a Velith warship, 12 slaves who had refused to stay broken. Yuna looked at the stars through the main window. Somewhere out there was Earth. Somewhere out there was home. "We have a lot of work to do," she said quietly. "And a long way to go." Dohei put a hand on her shoulder. "Then we should get started." Yuna nodded and sat down in the captain's chair. It was too big for her. It was made for creatures twice her size. But she would make it fit. She would make everything fit. The first 3 days were the hardest. Yuna did not sleep. She could not sleep. Every time she closed her eyes, she expected to wake up back in the slave quarters, the whole escape nothing but a dream. But it was real. The Kethavar was theirs now. The 12 survivors worked without rest to learn the ship. Dohi spent every hour at the navigation console, teaching herself to read the alien star maps. The Velith used a different system than humans, marking distances by the energy needed to travel them, rather than by space itself. It took her 2 days to understand the basics, but Dohi had always been a fast learner. Jinho took control of the weapons systems. He had maintained them as a slave, cleaning and repairing under the watch of Velith guards. Now he studied them properly, learning how to aim and fire. The ship had powerful cannons that could destroy smaller vessels with a single shot. It had shields that could block most attacks. It was a warship built for battle, and now it belonged to them. Mirai and 3 others worked on food and water. The Velith ate things that humans could not digest, but the ship had emergency supplies for different species. They found containers of nutrient paste meant for other slave races. It tasted terrible, but it would keep them alive. The Velith prisoners were a problem. 63 of them were still locked in the crew quarters, screaming and demanding release. Yuna had reduced the oxygen in their section just enough to make them weak and tired. She did not want to kill them, not yet. Dead Velith could not answer questions. On the 4th day, Yuna went to speak with Overseer Thrall again. She brought Jinho with her, carrying one of the guard's weapons. The Velith commander was sitting against the far wall of his quarters when Yuna opened the door. He looked smaller than she remembered. His gray skin had turned pale, and his 4 arms hung limp at his sides. "You are making a mistake," Thrall said. His voice was weak but still filled with hate. "The Empire will hunt you. They will find you. They will make examples of you that other slaves will remember for 1,000 years." Yuna sat down on the floor across from him, keeping a safe distance. "I have questions. You will answer them." Thrall laughed, a horrible sound like stones grinding together. "Why would I help you?" "Because if you do not, I will lower the oxygen in this room until you sleep. Then I will lower it more until you do not wake up." Yuna kept her voice calm and flat. "You will answer my questions, Overseer. The only choice you have is whether you answer them while breathing or not." The Velith stared at her with those black eyes. Yuna did not look away. She had been afraid of those eyes once. Now she saw them for what they were. Just eyes. Just another part of a creature that could bleed and die like anything else. "What do you want to know?" Thrall asked finally. Yuna asked about the ship's systems first. She learned where the emergency protocols were hidden, how to reset the navigation computer, and what frequencies the Velith military used for communication. Thrall answered every question. He was a coward, Yuna realized. He had seemed powerful when he had guards and weapons and control. Without those things, he was nothing. She asked about Earth next. How far was it? What route was safest? Were there other Velith ships between here and human space? Thrall told her everything. The journey to Earth would take 4 months at the ship's maximum speed. There were Velith patrol routes they would need to avoid. But the biggest danger was the message the ship had sent before Yuna took control. A distress signal. The Empire already knew something was wrong. "They will send hunters," Thrall said with a weak smile. "The fastest ships in the fleet. You cannot escape them in this old cruiser." Yuna stood up and looked down at him. "Then I will have to make sure they do not find us." She left him in his room and sealed the door again. Jinho walked beside her in silence until they reached the bridge. "He is right," Jinho said quietly. "If they send fast ships after us, we cannot outrun them." "I know." Yuna sat down in the captain's chair and pulled up the star maps Dohi had been studying. "So we will not try to outrun them. We will hide." The space between stars was not empty. There were asteroid fields, dust clouds, and dead zones where sensors did not work well. Yuna had found references to these places in the ship's database. The Velith avoided them because they were dangerous, but danger meant cover. "We go through the broken belt," Yuna said, pointing to a region on the map marked with warning symbols. "The asteroids will hide us from their sensors. We come out on the other side, closer to human space." Dohi shook her head. "That region is marked as deadly. Ships have been destroyed there." "Velith ships," Yuna replied. "Velith pilots who did not know how to fly carefully. You were the best pilot on Europa, Dohi. Can you do it?" Dohi was quiet for a long moment. Then she smiled. Just a little. "I can try." They changed course that night. The Keth Avar turned toward the Broken Belt, leaving the safe shipping lanes behind. Yuna watched the stars move on the main screen and felt something she had not felt in almost a year. Hope. But the hope did not last long. On the 6th day, Mireille ran onto the bridge with fear in her eyes. "Sensors are detecting ships behind us. 3 of them. They are moving fast." Yuna checked the readings herself. 3 Velith pursuit vessels. Smaller and quicker than the Keth Avar. They would catch up within 2 days. "How did they find us so quickly?" Dohi asked. Yuna did not know, but it did not matter now. The hunters were coming, and the Broken Belt was still a day and a half away. They would have to fight before they could hide. "Jinho," Yuna said. her voice steady despite the fear growing in her chest. "Get the weapons ready. Everyone else, learn your stations. We do not have much time." The 12 survivors looked at each other. They were not soldiers. They were engineers, pilots, researchers, and workers. They had never fought a battle in space, but they had already done the impossible once. They had taken a warship with their bare hands. Yuna stood up from the captain's chair and faced her small crew. "They think we are running. They think we are scared. They are right. I am scared. But I am also angry. And I would rather die fighting than go back to being a slave." No one argued. No one asked to surrender. They simply went to their stations and prepared for war. The Velith hunters came closer with every passing hour, and Yuna watched them come, planning the moment when the hunted would become the hunters. The first Velith ship appeared on the main screen as a small dot of light, then the second, then the third. They flew in a triangle formation, moving fast and confident. Why would they not be confident? They were trained warriors chasing escaped slaves in a stolen ship. Yuna stood at the center of the bridge, her hands clasped behind her back to hide their shaking. Around her, the other survivors worked at their stations. Dohi sat at navigation, her fingers moving across the controls with growing skill. Jinho watched the weapons console, his face tight with concentration. Mireille monitored the sensors, calling out distances and speeds. "They will reach weapon range in 20 minutes, Mireille reported. Yuna nodded. 20 minutes. That was all the time she had to turn 12 frightened humans into a fighting crew. "Dohi, bring us about. Face them directly." Dohi hesitated. "Face them? Should we not try to reach the asteroid belt?" "We cannot outrun them," Yuna said, "but we can surprise them. They expect us to flee. They do not expect us to attack." The HFY was an old ship, but it was still a heavy cruiser. It was built to take damage and deal it back. The 3 pursuit vessels were faster, but they were smaller. If Yuna could even the odds, the fight might be fair. She opened a channel to the entire ship. "Everyone, listen to me. In a few minutes, we are going to be in a battle. I will not lie to you. We might die. But we have already proven that humans can do things the Velith think are impossible. Now we prove it again." The channel stayed open. No one spoke. Yuna took a deep breath. "For everyone we lost. For Europa. For Earth. Fight hard." She closed the channel and turned to face the enemy ships on the screen. The Velith commander of the pursuit group was named Korath. He was a fleet admiral, one of the highest ranks in the Empire. The High Command had sent him personally because the situation was embarrassing. Slaves taking a warship? It was a story that could not be allowed to spread. Korath watched his sensors with impatience as his ships closed the distance. The stolen cruiser was turning to face him. Foolish. The humans were going to try to fight. He almost admired their courage, even as he prepared to destroy them. "All ships, prepare to board," he ordered through the fleet channel. "I want survivors. We need to make examples." The 3 pursuit vessels spread out, preparing to surround the HFY. Standard tactics. Overwhelm the enemy from multiple angles. Korath had done this 100 times before. Then the old cruiser fired. Jinho had spent months maintaining the Velith weapons as a slave. He knew exactly how much power they could generate, exactly how far they could reach, exactly how to aim them for maximum damage. The Velith had taught him well, though they never meant to. The first shot hit the lead pursuit vessel directly in its engine section. The ship shook and stuttered, its speed dropping instantly. Smoke and fire poured from the wound in its hull. "Evasive action!" Korath shouted. But Jinho was already firing again. The second shot missed, but the third caught another pursuit vessel on its side. Shields flared and failed. Metal tore apart in the silent darkness of space. Korath stared at his tactical display in disbelief. 2 of his ships were damaged in the first 30 seconds of battle. This was not possible. These were escaped slaves. not trained gunners. "Return fire! All weapons, return fire!" The pursuit vessels shot back with everything they had. The Cathavar's shields lit up as energy blasts slammed against them. The bridge shook. A console exploded in the corner, throwing sparks across the floor. But Dohi kept the ship steady, turning it to spread the damage across different shield sections. "Shields at 60%, Mireille called out. "Keep firing," Yuna ordered. "Do not stop." Jinho's hands moved like they had minds of their own. He had never fired weapons in real combat before, but something in him had changed. The fear was still there, but it had become fuel. Every shot was for the friends he had lost. Every hit was revenge. The crippled lead ship tried to pull back, but Jinho targeted its weapon systems and destroyed them one by one. The second damaged vessel was spinning out of control, its crew struggling to regain power. Only Korath's flagship remained at full strength. The admiral made a decision. His pride demanded he stay and fight, but his training told him the truth. This battle was lost. The humans had somehow turned his easy mission into a disaster. "All ships retreat," he ordered, the words bitter in his mouth. "Fall back to the fleet rendezvous point." His flagship turned and ran. The two damaged vessels limped after him, leaving debris and bodies floating in the void behind them. On the bridge of the Cathavar, there was silence. Then Mireille started to laugh. It was a strange sound, half joy and half disbelief. Soon the others joined her. They had won. 12 humans against 3 Velith warships. And they had won. Yuna did not laugh. She looked at the retreating enemy ships and knew this was only the beginning. "Korath will come back," she said quietly. "He will bring more ships, bigger ships. We hurt his pride today. He will not make the same mistakes twice." Dohi stood up from her station and walked to Yuna's side. "Then we need to be ready. How long until we reach the asteroid belt?" 14 hours, Mireille answered. Yuna nodded. "We repair what we can. We rest in shifts, and we keep moving." She looked around at her small crew. They were tired and scared, and pushed beyond any limit they had known before, but they were alive. They were free. "Korath will report what happened here," Yuna continued. "The Velith High Command will learn that humans can fight back. They will learn that their ships can be taken, their soldiers can be beaten." She smiled, and for the first time since Europa, it reached her eyes. "Good. Let them learn. Let them be afraid." The Cathavar turned toward the broken belt and continued its long journey home. Behind it, the wreckage of battle floated in the darkness, proof that the impossible could become real. And across the Empire, word began to spread. The humans had escaped. The humans had fought. The humans had won. It was a small story at first. A rumor passed between slaves in whispered voices, but small stories can grow into something larger, and sometimes a single spark can start a fire that burns down empires. Yuna did not know it yet, but she had already lit that spark. Now she just had to keep it alive long enough to reach home. 2 months had passed since the battle with Korath's ships. The Cathavar had made it through the broken belt, though not without damage. The asteroid field was as dangerous as the Velith warnings had said. Twice, Dohi had to make impossible turns to avoid rocks the size of buildings. Once, a smaller asteroid had hit their hull, tearing a hole that took 3 days to repair. But they had survived. They always survived. Yuna spent most of her time in the ship's data center, a room filled with glowing screens and humming machines. The Velith kept records of everything, every mission, every conquest, every slave taken from every world. She read through files that made her stomach turn with anger and sadness. The Velith had been doing this for centuries. Humanity was just the latest species to suffer under their rule. One night, Dohi found Yuna staring at a map. It showed dozens of star systems, all marked with Velith symbols. Processing centers, slave camps, mining colonies where captured peoples worked until they died. "What are you looking at?" Dohi asked. Yuna pointed to the map. "The Velith have enslaved at least 12 different species, millions of beings taken from their homes just like we were. They are scattered across these facilities, working and dying for an empire that sees them as tools. There is nothing we can do for them," Dohi said softly. "We are 12 people on one ship. We cannot free everyone." "No," Yuna agreed. "But we can do something else." She pulled up another file, one she had found in Overseer Thrall's personal records. It contained codes, locations, and schedules. Everything needed to find the slave processing centers. "I want to send a message," Yuna said, "to everyone, the Velith military, the Velith government, and every human listening post within range. I want to tell them what we did and give them this information." Dohi's eyes went wide. "That will make us a bigger target. Every Velith ship in the sector will hunt us." "They are already hunting us." Yuna stood up and faced her friend. "But if we share this information, something changes. Every species the Velith have enslaved will learn that escape is possible. Every slave will know where the chains are made. Some of them might fight back. Some of them might escape like we did." Dohi was quiet for a long moment. Then she nodded slowly. "You want to start a revolution?" "I want to give people hope," Yuna replied. "That is how revolutions begin." They prepared the message together. Yuna wrote the words while Dohi set up the broadcast system. The Kethavar had powerful communication equipment, strong enough to reach across multiple star systems. When they were ready, Yuna sat in front of the recording device and took a deep breath. The red light came on. She was live. "My name is Yuna. I am human. 11 months ago, the Velith raided my home and took me as a slave. They killed my friends. They worked us until we broke. They believed we were too weak and too stupid to resist." She held up a data chip, the one containing Thrall's files. "They were wrong. 12 of us captured this warship with our bare hands. We fought off Velith pursuit ships with weapons we taught ourselves to use, and now we are going home." Yuna leaned forward, her eyes hard. "This chip contains the location of every Velith slave processing facility in this sector. I am sending it to everyone. Your government will receive it. Your military will receive it. And every human listening post within range will receive it too." She paused to let the words sink in. "But that is not all. I am also sending this message to every other species the Velith have conquered. The Torani, who were enslaved 50 years ago. The Mektal, whose homeworld was destroyed a century past. The Vrax, the Silenti, the Chorus, all of you. You are hearing this right now." Yuna stood up, the camera following her. "The Velith told you that resistance was impossible. They told you that their empire was too strong to fight. They lied. 12 humans, unarmed and alone, took one of their warships. If we can do it, so can you." She smiled, and there was something dangerous in it. Every species they have enslaved will receive this message. Every rebellion they have crushed will hear that the chains can be broken. And they will wonder if the humans can do it. Why can they not? She reached for the control to end the transmission, then stopped. "To the Velith High Command, we are not afraid of you anymore. Come find us if you can. We will be ready." The red light went off. The message was sent. For a moment, there was silence on the bridge. Then Jinho started clapping. Mirai joined him, and soon all 12 survivors were cheering. They knew the danger they had just created. They knew the Velith would come for them with everything they had. But they also knew they had done something that could never be undone. The message traveled across the stars at the speed of light. It reached Velith military stations where commanders watched in disbelief. It reached human colonies on the edge of settled space where people played it over and over again. It reached slave camps on a dozen worlds, where captured beings whispered the words to each other in the darkness. Within a week, reports started coming in. A group of Tarani slaves had attacked their guards on a mining colony. They failed, but they tried. A Mektal transport ship had been sabotaged by its own cargo. The slaves had destroyed the ship rather than reach their destination. A Velith processing center had gone silent, its fate unknown. Small things, failures mostly, but failures meant attempts, and attempts meant hope. On the bridge of the Kethavar, Yuna watched the reports come in. Each one was a life lost, a rebellion crushed. But each one was also proof that her message had been heard. "We started something," Dohi said, standing beside her. "Yes," Yuna replied. "Now we have to make sure we finish it." The ship continued toward Earth, 2 months still remaining in their journey. Behind them, the Velith Empire was starting to shake. Cracks were appearing in a system that had seemed unbreakable. And at the center of every crack was a single question, repeated in 100 languages across 1,000 worlds. If the humans can do it, why can we not? Yuna did not have an answer to that question, but she knew that the Velith did not have an answer either. And that was enough. For now, it was enough. The Sol system appeared on the navigation screen like a dream Yuna had forgotten she was having. There was the sun, small and yellow at this distance. There were the outer planets, giant balls of gas spinning in the darkness. And somewhere beyond them was Earth. Home. 4 months of running. 4 months of hiding in asteroid fields and dead zones and the empty spaces between stars. 4 months of learning to fight, to fly, to survive. And now, finally, the journey was almost over. "I never thought I would see it again," Mireille whispered, standing at the observation window. Tears ran down her face, but she was smiling. Yuna allowed herself a small moment of relief. Then the sensors started screaming. "Ships!" Dohi called out, her voice sharp. "Multiple contacts, coming from behind." Yuna ran to the tactical display. 20 dots were approaching from the direction they had come. 20 Velith warships, more than she had ever seen in one place. At their center was a massive vessel, bigger than anything else on the screen. "That is a command dreadnought," Jinho said quietly. "Korath's flagship." The admiral had kept his promise. He had come back with an army. Yuna felt cold fear spreading through her chest, but she pushed it down. They had come too far to die now. They were so close. "Dohi, how long until we reach Earth?" 6 hours at maximum speed. "And how long until they catch us?" Dohi checked her calculations. Her face went pale. 4 hours. The bridge fell silent. 4 hours. They would be destroyed 2 hours before reaching home. All their struggles, all their victories, would end in a flash of fire in the darkness of space. Then the communication system crackled to life. "Unidentified vessel? This is the United Human Fleet. Please identify yourself." Yuna's heart stopped. She grabbed the communication controls with trembling hands. "This is the Kethavar, a captured Velith cruiser." "My name is Yuna. We are the survivors of the Europa raid. We are being pursued by Velith warships. Please, we need help." There was a long pause. Too long. Yuna felt despair beginning to creep into her mind. Then a new voice came through, calm and strong. "Yuna, this is Admiral Suman of the United Human Fleet. We received your message 2 weeks ago. We have been waiting for you." A pause. "Hold your position. Help is coming." From behind the massive shape of Jupiter, ships began to appear. Human ships, cruisers and destroyers and carriers, rising from where they had been hiding in the planet's shadow. 37 vessels, their hulls painted with the blue and white of Earth. They had come. Against all odds, against all reason, humanity had come to bring its children home. Admiral Korath watched the human fleet emerge with a mixture of shock and fury. Intelligence had told him the humans had barely any ships left after years of Velith raids. Intelligence had been wrong. "All ships, battle formation," he ordered. "We will crush them and take the stolen cruiser. This ends today." The two fleets approached each other as the HFY raced toward the safety of human lines. Yuna watched the tactical display, her hands gripping the arms of the captain's chair so hard her knuckles turned white. The battle began with a flash of light. Energy weapons crossed the void between the fleets. Shields flared and failed. Ships twisted and turned in deadly dances. The humans were outgunned, their technology inferior to the Velith. But they fought with something the Velith had never seen before. They fought with rage. Every human captain had watched Yuna's message. They had seen the young woman speak of slavery and resistance and hope. They had heard her challenge the empire that had terrorized their species for decades. And they had decided that today they would stop running. A human destroyer rammed a Velith cruiser, destroying both ships in a massive explosion. Two carriers coordinated their fire, overwhelming a dreadnought's shields and tearing it apart. Fighters swarmed like insects, targeting weapons and engines with suicidal precision. The Velith were not used to this. They were used to enemies who surrendered, who broke, who gave up when the fight became too hard. The humans did none of these things. They pushed forward when they should have retreated. They attacked when they should have defended. They died, but they kept coming. Korath watched 5 of his ships burn and felt something he had never felt before in battle: doubt. In the center of the chaos, the HFY fought alongside its human escorts. Jinho fired the weapons he had mastered over 4 months of flight. Dohi piloted the ship through maneuvers that should have been impossible. And Yuna commanded from the captain's chair, her voice steady even as death exploded all around them. They were not just survivors anymore. They were warriors. The battle lasted 3 hours. When it ended, 11 Velith ships had been destroyed. 6 more were crippled beyond repair. Korath's flagship limped away from the battlefield, its hull scarred and burning. The admiral had survived, but his pride had not. The HFY descended through Earth's atmosphere surrounded by an honor guard of human fighters. Millions of people watched on screens around the world as the massive alien warship, now covered in burn marks and painted with human flags, landed in the heart of Seoul. The sun was setting when Yuna walked down the boarding ramp. The air smelled like rain and city and home. Crowds of people pressed against the security barriers, cheering and crying and calling out names. Yuna saw her mother in the front row, older than she remembered, tears streaming down her face. She did not remember crossing the distance between them. One moment, she was at the bottom of the ramp, the next, she was in her mother's arms, sobbing like the child she had not been allowed to be for so long. Behind her, 11 other survivors emerged from the ship. Dohi, Jinho, Mireille, and all the rest, families rushed forward to meet them. Strangers embraced them like old friends. The world celebrated their return as if they were heroes from an ancient story. And perhaps they were. In the weeks that followed, the Velith Empire began to crumble. Yuna's message had spread to every corner of conquered space. Rebellions erupted on 32 worlds within a year. Species that had been broken for generations suddenly remembered how to fight. The Velith military stretched thinner and thinner, trying to hold together an empire that no longer wanted to be held. Yuna did not lead armies. She led something more dangerous. She created training programs for escaped slaves, teaching them to understand Velith technology, to capture their ships, to turn their own weapons against them. She became a symbol, her face known across 100 worlds. 3 years after her escape, she walked onto the bridge of her first command. It was a Velith dreadnought, captured intact during a slave uprising she had helped plan. The crew had named it the Liberation. Una sat in the captain's chair and looked at the stars through the main window. Somewhere out there, the Velith were still fighting. Somewhere out there, slaves were still suffering. The war was not over. But the Velith had made a mistake when they took her from Europa. They had seen a small human woman and thought she was nothing. They had made her a slave and expected her to stay broken. They had created their own destruction. Una smiled and gave the order to move. The Liberation turned toward the stars and jumped into the darkness. There was still work to be done.